Assalamu alaikum. मेरा नाम आरिफ मंसूरी है and I'm the host of The Mansoori Show, the show that is best described as मिलाऊंगा, बताऊंगा, दिखाऊंगा. Your link to everything Pakistani, straight from California, The Mansoori Show. नाज़रीन, आज हम आपको कौंसल जनरल ऑफ पाकिस्तान जनाब अब्दुल जब्बार मेमन की बेवरली हिल्स कैलिफोर्निया में वाक़या रिहाइश गाह पे ले चलेंगे, जहाँ पर यौम यकजहती कश्मीर के हवाले से एक प्रोग्राम का इनक़ाद किया गया. इस प्रोग्राम में शिरकत के लिए विक्टोरिया स्कोफील्ड, जो कि मकबूजा जम्मू और कश्मीर के मसले के हवाले से एक एक्सपर्ट गर्दानी जाती हैं, वो भी इसमें शरीक हुई. विक्टोरिया स्कोफील्ड एक ब्रिटिश ऑथर, बायोग्राफ़र और मिलिट्री हिस्टोरियन हैं और वो इस मसले के ऊपर उन्होंने अपने ख़यालात का इजहार किया. तो आइए हम इस प्रोग्राम की झलकियाँ आपको दिखाते हैं.
I would now request Mr. Abdul Jabbar Memon, Consul General of Pakistan, for his brief remarks.
Thank you, Sir. Madam Victoria Schofield, our chief guest and keynote speaker today, distinguished Consul Generals, members of Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good evening. It's my honor to welcome all of you today at Pakistan House. We have all gathered here to learn about a global issue which is affecting the lives of millions of people for the last 7 decades, and that is the Kashmir dispute. One of the oldest internationally recognized disputes on the agenda of the United Nations Security Council. I'm very glad to share with you that renowned writer Victoria Schofield is here with us today, and she's going to talk on today's topic, 70 years of Kashmir issue. Before I share more details with you about Victoria Schofield, I would like to say a few words about the state of affairs in the Indian occupied Kashmir. Organization of Islamic Conference, known as OIC, has recently released its report on the human rights situation in Indian occupied Kashmir. According to the report, 94,000 Kashmiris have been killed by the Indian security forces since 1989. Out of these 94,000, more than 7,000 persons have been killed in the Indian custody. More than 107,000 structures have been destroyed. More than 22,000 women have been widowed. Some 105,000 children have been orphaned, and more than 10,000 women have been raped and molested by Indian military and paramilitary troops. The report, while quoting a number of reputed international human rights organizations like Amnesty International, specifically deals with the use of pellet guns by Indian security forces that has resulted in more than 70,000 people being injured. Worst, 200 of these 7,000 people have lost their vision, which includes children between the ages of 5 to 16. The report concludes by admitting that the Kashmir dispute is not only a question over territorial jurisdiction between India and Pakistan, but it also concerns the future of millions of people and their rights to self-determination. Ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity to reiterate that Pakistan would continue to extend diplomatic, political and moral support to the struggle of Kashmiri people for the right of self-determination. We have a principled position on this issue, and whatever India tries to do to deter us from our principled position would not succeed. Indian support for subversive and terrorist activities inside Pakistan is meant to force Pakistan to give up principled position on Kashmir dispute. We believe that it's incumbent of international community, academia, non-governmental organizations and people of conscience to raise their voice against brutalities committed by Indian forces in Indian occupied Kashmir and ask the Indian government to stop them. Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria Schofield is a world-renowned author and military historian, an Oxford graduate and contemporary of Benazir Bhutto, former Prime Minister of Pakistan, and Theresa May, current British Prime Minister at Oxford. She has over the years written very extensively about the Kashmir issue, including 2 books, Kashmir in Conflict and Kashmir and its Regional Context, Self-Determination and Prospects for Peace. Over the years, she has also delivered lectures at leading think tanks and universities on this topic. She is someone who has very extensive knowledge of the region of South Asia and Kashmir. I have no hesitation in saying that rather she is leading expert on one of the most important issues in the world, Kashmir dispute, a dispute which has at any time the potential to start a nuclear war between India and Pakistan.
I'd also like to thank Majid Bhatt, who has been wanting me to come and speak in Los Angeles on Kashmir for a number of years, and now finally we've made it. He's here with his family and his brother and a cousin or 2. And I'd like to pay a particular tribute to the Bhatt family, because without having met them, I first met Majid's great uncle in London in 1979, and I first went to the Valley of Kashmir in 1981. And his family have hosted me and sheltered me ever since, whenever I've gone to try and study and learn more about the situation in Kashmir. They've even hosted my whole family, and I have here tonight my husband and my younger daughter Olivia, both of whom have also been to Kashmir on one of my study visits. The topic of my presentation tonight is indeed Kashmir at 70. And within this context, I want to remind you why a resolution of the issue is so important, why it shouldn't be forgotten, why it should remain on our agenda, and at the same time, why it should not be on our agenda Kashmir at 80, Kashmir at 90, Kashmir at 100, why it's imperative that this issue is resolved. The first reason I will give is because the status of Kashmir, or more correctly as it's known, the state of Jammu and Kashmir, located between India and Pakistan, as we know too well, is disputed between 2 countries. When the subcontinent of South Asia gained independence from Britain in 1947, the future of the state of Jammu and Kashmir remained undecided. And this is one of the greatest tragedies I think we have in our history. There are many tragedies of the 20th century, but I think the fact that the state of Jammu and Kashmir's fate was left undecided in 1947 has had such a huge impact on the people of the region. Its ruler, its then ruler, Maharaja Hari Singh, could not make a decision during what his son later told me was a once-in-a-millennium phenomenon. As a Hindu ruling over a majority Muslim population, he neither decided to join India nor to join the future Pakistan, there being no option at that time under the Britain's partition plan for any state to remain independent. In making up their minds which state, which new dominion to join, the 560 or more princely states, some of which were no bigger than a landed estate, others of which were indeed, as Jammu and Kashmir, large enough to constitute a country, were requested to bear in mind their geographical location and also the wishes of their people. Unfortunately, there was no compulsion, and it was up to the ruler to decide. There was no forethought either or consultation. In the case of Jammu and Kashmir, while it seemed that the Maharaja wanted to remain independent, as I've said, there was no provision for any of these states to remain independent. And both India and Pakistan claimed the state in its entirety. India, as I've said, because the ruler was a Hindu, and it was expected that the Hindu ruler would want to join majority Hindu India, and Pakistan because the majority of its population, well over 75% of the inhabitants, were Muslim. Without going into detail over the history of this critical period between August 1947 and October 47, but please ask questions if you have burning questions you would like to ask at the end. It's evident that since both newly independent countries envisaged the state as coming within their respective borders, there was bound to be conflict. Fighting immediately broke out, and within months of independence, the 2 countries were at war. the Maharaja agreeing to what was called a temporary accession to the state of India in return for military assistance. The outcome of this first war over Kashmir, fought between 1947 and 49, was an uncertain ceasefire along what we now know as the line of control. India retained control of 2/3 of the state, and Pakistan retained control of 1/3. We don't have a map here, but I always envisaged the state of Jammu and Kashmir like a great big butterfly with its wings sprawling across the Hindu Kush, the Karakoram, and the Himalayan mountains. You have Ladakh on one corner and Gilgit-Baltistan on the other, and the thorax of the butterfly is the valley of Kashmir and the area which we know as Azad Jammu and Kashmir, AJK, which is comprised of Muzaffarabad, Poonch, and other regions. And this is essentially the area we're talking about, this beautiful butterfly pinned between two countries. The recommendation first made by the former Viceroy and Governor General at the time, Lord Mountbatten, which was agreed to by both Prime Minister Nehru and Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and endorsed by the United Nations, was for a plebiscite referendum or reference to the people. But this was not followed through. Discussions over the plebiscite foundered. They did, however, introduce a vital component into the debate. Instead of the decision being up to the governments of India and Pakistan, the proposal to hold a plebiscite meant that the debate could not be regarded simply as a territorial issue, but one about the rights of individuals to determine their future. And this is how it has remained ever since.
नाज़रीन, आप देख रहे हैं यौम यकजहती कश्मीर के हवाले से मुनक़्क़द होने वाली तकरीब, जो कि कौंसल जनरल ऑफ पाकिस्तान लॉस एंजलिस जनाब अब्दुल जब्बार मेमन साहब की रहायशगाह पे मुनक़्क़द हुई। इसकी झलकियाँ हमारे प्रोग्राम में वक्त हुआ है छोटे से वक्फे का। देखते रहिए, वी विल बी राइट बैक। वेलकम बैक। वक्फे पे जाने से पहले हम सुन रहे थे विक्टोरिया स्कोफील्ड, जो कि मकबूजा जम्मू और कश्मीर के मसले के हवाले से एक माहिर गर्दानी जाती हैं, उनके ख्यालात। आइए इस तकरीर का बकिया हिस्सा मुलाज़ा फरमाइए।
Although the state has remained de facto divided along the line of control, the fact that its de jure position has not been resolved has meant that the dispute has continued to fester, poisoning relations between India and Pakistan, their enmity erupting again at war in 1965 and 1999, with another war fought in 1971 over the secession of Pakistan's eastern wing, now Bangladesh. As recently as President Musharraf's tenure in office between 1999 and 2008, while trying to initiate a peace process with India, he refused to contemplate dividing the state along the line of control, maintaining that Pakistanis were allergic to it. What he really meant was that in terms of loss of face, it was far too big a step down to accept what, since 1947, successive governments had rejected, accepting that the line of control as the international frontier also, and this is what is so important in the present day, did not take into account the wishes and aspirations of the people. This uneasy situation persists to this day. So the first reason why Kashmir deserves our attention is because it is an unresolved dispute between two nations affecting the lives of millions. And as a history of other trouble spots throughout the world has demonstrated, any dispute which is unresolved has the potential to flare up at any time, disabling the region and causing immense suffering. Secondly, and one might almost say because the relationship between India and Pakistan has been continually hostile, both countries have felt an essential component of their military defense has been the development of nuclear weapons. On the plus side, both countries have agreed not to attack each other's nuclear facilities, and there have been regular exchanges of the lists of their nuclear facilities on the 1st of January each year. A hotline has also been set up to warn each other of an accident which might be interpreted as a nuclear attack, but the threat of a nuclear exchange remains. Thus, you have a 70-year-old dispute and two potentially belligerent nuclearized neighbors. As His Excellency has mentioned, Kashmir, the state of Jammu and Kashmir, can be a flashpoint at any time. Any outbreak of hostilities could become deadly, not only for the 12 to 14 million inhabitants of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, but for the lives of the nearly 200 million who live in Pakistan and 1 billion who live in India. And I don't need to add that we're not just talking about a big bomb, or even a bomb that such as was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. We're talking about setting in train mutual annihilation. My third reason why it's important to resolve the Jammu and Kashmir issue is because of the dangerous domestic narratives which can run in both India and Pakistan. Since 1947, the general domestic narrative in both countries has been hostile to the other. Generations have been brought up to mistrust, dislike, hate their neighbor, mainly because of the repercussions over the unresolved dispute over Kashmir. In today's media-driven age, where sound bites often influence actions, passions can be whipped up through any number of the media outlets which now exist in both countries. Restraint is a daily challenge. And as has already been experienced, it's all too easy for non-state actors to take center stage by taking the law into their own hands. The attack on the Delhi Parliament in 2001, just after the 9/11 attacks in New York and Washington, nearly brought India and Pakistan to the brink of war. The border was closed, and both armies mobilized along their international frontier. More sinister, maps of both countries were produced in the international newspapers indicating where a nuclear strike might or might not take place. Yet again, the inhabitants of the state bore the brunt of India's wrath. I myself had chosen to visit the Valley of Kashmir in the spring of 2002 and witnessed firsthand the repercussions for the Kashmiris. Internet facilities were shut down, mobile phones were cut off, and the security forces were even more omnipresent on the streets. A similar hiatus occurred after Mumbai in 2008, when 12 coordinated bombing attacks were made across the city of Mumbai by members of the proscribed terrorist organization Lashkar-e-Toiba, killing 164 people and wounding over 300. The damage, again, to Indo-Pakistani relations was instant and far-reaching. Soon after the attack, I was in London and I listened to the well-known Indian commentator Shashi Tharoor, making it very clear that were there to be another such attack in the immediate future, the demand for war against Pakistan would be unstoppable. I'm sorry to say that I've heard the same repeated by Indian officials in the present day. Of course, this is not the mindset of every Indian, nor indeed every Pakistani, and there are numerous think tanks, academic groups, all working towards creating better relations. As I've experienced myself, there is tremendous affection between Indians and Pakistanis at the civil society level. But it only takes one misguided action to sabotage diplomatic relations and consequently the peace and stability of the region. After Mumbai, it took the best part of 5 years for a thaw to take place in the relationship between India and Pakistan. And even now, there is every likelihood that if there were to be another Mumbai or Chennai, once more using the unresolved Jammu-Kashmir issue as the root cause of the failed relationship between the two countries, relations would again be severed. Obviously, the best way to guard against this dangerous scenario is to focus on resolving the issue once and for all, to work out a just and fair resolution, to create a peace dividend rather than one which perpetually promotes war. Fourthly, my fourth reason, and this should have been my first reason, and the Consul General has referred to it already, is because of the tremendous suffering which has taken place, particularly in the Valley of Kashmir. The alienation and disaffection against the Indian government, which turned into armed insurrection in the early 1990s, has still not been addressed. And while there has been an ongoing insurgent movement, there has inevitably been retaliation, with the people caught in the crossfire. Statistics are frequently contested, but you've heard from the Consul General 94,000. I've heard over 100,000 people have died in the past 30 years, mostly young men. At least 10,000 have disappeared, which potentially leaves an equivalent number of half-widows, women who cannot remarry because they haven't actually had the deaths of their husbands confirmed, as well as mothers who are bereaved. There are also thousands of orphans. Thousands have been tortured and women raped. The psychological impact of the trauma has barely been measured, let alone treated. And I know this because I have a British friend who goes regularly with psychotherapists from London to try and help some of the people who have suffered trauma. I'd also recommend this brilliant play that I saw staged in London, The Jinns of Eidgah. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but it's actually written by an Indian playwright and journalist, Abhishek Majumdar. And in a way, I think it's a must-read for all of you who would like to learn more about the emotional status of the inhabitants of the Kashmir Valley. Let me also read from you a real-life interview I did with Dr. Rashid in the Bone and Joint Hospital in 1994. It was at a time when they were saying that every member of a family in Kashmir has lost a loved one. And this is what Dr. Rashid told me. He said, "My brother was 25 years old. He was running a cosmetics shop. The border security forces came and took him. In front of my mother and family, he was killed. Someone had pointed him out as being a militant. He was not armed, and in the news that evening, they gave that there was an encounter when there was no encounter at all." That's just one story among thousands. 23 years later, since I gave that interview, the state remains militarized. People cannot travel freely. They are a long way from enjoying the same liberty of movement which we, living in Europe and the United States, take for granted. Curfews are frequently imposed. People cannot be sure of returning home at night. They cannot be certain of going to a court of law and getting justice. The Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which is known as APSA, means that the authorities have the right to arrest and hold anyone suspected of, quotes, terrorist activities. Journalists are under constant duress, and so a true picture of what is happening rarely reaches the rest of the world. And I say this as a foreign journalist. I can write an article, but if a Kashmiri journalist based in Srinagar would write the same article, he would be under pressure. And it's therefore very difficult to paint an accurate picture. The Indian government's latest tactic of using pellet guns against unarmed civilians to dispel crowds has had untold consequences, blinding hundreds and alienating a whole new generation. At least 140,000 Kashmiri Pandits remain displaced for 30 years from their homes. I've frequently heard said to me, how can we accept the Indian government after what's been done to our people? And so the fourth reason why Kashmir is important is the humanitarian aspect. Yes, there are other humanitarian tragedies in the world, in Syria, Iraq, the Ukraine, but that's not a good enough reason for the Jammu and Kashmir issue to be neglected. One of the reasons why I started to write about Kashmir nearly 30 years ago was because I felt the heart and soul of the issue, how it had affected the people in the region, seemed to be missing from the narrative. That is why, with my friendship with the Butt family, I went to Kashmir and wrote my first book, Kashmir in the Crossfire, published in 1996. I'm sorry to say that what I wrote then, over 20 years ago, is as relevant today as it was then. Fifthly, my fifth reason is resources. It's almost impossible to quantify how much money has been spent, both in terms of military defense for conventional and nuclear weapons, which both countries can ill afford because of their continuing enmity. India may be booming, we often hear it's booming, but I hasten to add that only a fragment of its society is booming, a high proportion of its inhabitants still living below the poverty line. Poverty in Pakistan has the same gloomy statistics. Moreover, Pakistan has a volatile situation, as we know, along its western frontier bordering Afghanistan, and so the expense of fortifying its borders in the east against India is a luxury its government should not need to. These 5 reasons, the waste of economic resources which could be spent on health, education and development, the humanitarian suffering, the danger of inflamed public opinion, the nuclear potential of both India and Pakistan, and then the fact that there is an unresolved dispute between 2 neighbors are all reasons why it's not just important but imperative for the Kashmir issue to be resolved peacefully and fairly. No other issue of contention, be it the pain and trauma still felt over partition, the unresolved territorial dispute over Sir Creek, the anger over Bangladesh, the dispute over Siachen, rivalry in Afghanistan, has the potential to create such enmity between 2 large and important neighbors, which in turn has led to great suffering and uncertainty for the people living in Jammu and Kashmir. I want now to end by reading a poem that I read in a newspaper in Lahore, I think in the region of 25 years ago, but it's a beautiful poem because I think it sums up some of that suffering. Behold the valley lush and green, splendid and serene in all its majesty, paradise of peasants, kings and queens throughout the ages. Trees stand tall in verdurous grandeur, bowing not to time nor wind. But man is blind and cannot see that every noble head's in sorrow bent. Each leaf is shedding tears, each bough is breaking with its heavy burden of grief. For man is deaf, he cannot hear the wailing in the wind. Thank you so much.
नाज़रीन, आपने कौंसल जनरल ऑफ पाकिस्तान जनाब अब्दुल जब्बार मेमन साहब की रिहाइशगाह पे मुनक़्क़िद होने वाली यौम यकजहती कश्मीर के हवाले से तकरीब की झलकियाँ मुलाज़ा फरमाई, और इसमें आपने कौंसल जनरल ऑफ पाकिस्तान जनाब अब्दुल जब्बार मेमन और विक्टोरिया स्कोफील्ड जो कि मकबूजा जम्मू कश्मीर के मसले के हवाले से एक माहिर हैं, उनके ख़यालात भी सुने। उम्मीद है इससे आपकी मालूमात में इजाफ़ा हुआ होगा। हमें अपने फ़ीडबैक से आगाह करते रहिए। आपके स्क्रीन पे जो एड्रेस है उस पे हमें अपने कमेंट्स, अपना फ़ीडबैक भेजते रहिए, और हमारे प्रोग्राम की पिछली एपिसोड्स देखने के लिए प्लीज़ विज़िट pakistanlink.com/ARY। हमारे प्रोग्राम का वक्त अब ख़त्म हुआ। अपना ख्याल रखिएगा। खुदा हाफ़िज़।